Hi, we're Eric and Brittany Highland, and along with our son Caspian, we are getting ready to drive around the world.
We don't know how you found us. Maybe it was through one video or through a hashtag search. However it was, those words, "we're getting ready to drive around the world," might catch you off guard. Maybe you find yourself thinking, "I'd love to do that." Or some people have all the luck.
And the truth is, we didn't wake up one morning with the knowledge, the time, the money, or even the idea to drive around the world. It's been a long journey for us.
In fact, it's been a 10-year long journey, and it's often been difficult and full of challenges. But we've always promised to be transparent. So in that spirit, we're here to share our story today. This is us.
Gosh, Brittany, where to begin? 2011. We'll take this story year by year. In 2011, we didn't have a lot.
That's true.
Yeah, it was a rough time. We were emerging from a darker season of our lives. We were rebuilding relationships and
Credit
scores, trying to figure out how everything was going to work for us. And we just didn't have a lot. I was working as much as I possibly could.
Yeah, so we didn't see each other very much. We were kind of like ships passing in the night.
Yeah, Brittany would make me the sandwiches for lunch because I couldn't afford to eat out. So she would make me these sandwiches and she'd write these little love notes on the outside of the sandwiches. And that was like the highlight of my day.
We slept on a $50 futon that we got from a friend.
And I think our dining room set was made up of some old outside picnic table thing that my mom had that was like falling apart.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. So we didn't have a lot, and that's kind of was the origins of our story there.
But we had a dream.
We did have a dream.
And our dream was to work together on a business that we founded together and get rid of the jobs and being away from each other so much and have more freedom as self-employed people.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we just wanted to spend more time together. And at that point in time, we didn't even know about traveling around the world or driving around the world. It was just we weren't seeing each other and we didn't have a lot, but we wanted to do something together.
So on January 17th, 2011, we started our first business together, Connection LLC.
And it was a company that was actually designed to, number one, give us time to spend together, and number two, help other people with their online marketing and SEO. That first year was tough. In our first year, like I said, we didn't have much money. And so one of the things that we would do is we would find ways to entertain ourselves by just getting a picnic blanket and going out to a park with a can of Dr. Pepper and some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Basically anything free.
Yes, anything free. We were good with that. And as far as client work,
so that first year, 2011, our first year as business owners, we had one consulting client. Off to a blazing start.
I had taken a job with the Texas state government that I was really excited about, and it was going to pay very well. And so we packed up all our stuff in a U-Haul and
moved across the country
from Seattle to Austin, Texas.
When we found out that we were moving to Austin, we were going to a city where nobody knew us, but we still had our company and needed to build a client base there. So in order to do so, Eric founded a blog called The Austinaut, which was never meant to be its own thing. It was just meant to be a showcase to show potential clients what we could do for them.
I bought some fancy suits. I bought some fancy suits, and I looked good in them, and I went to work in this place. Everybody was happy.
You looked good in them?
I did look good in them. You said I looked good in them. So I got down there in my fancy suit, and I started this job, and ultimately what should not have been a political position was, and I didn't want to play that game at the expense of the taxpayers, so I resigned. And it was very unexpected and very short.
So after moving all the way across the country, we had nothing. And we were totally shaken, and we had a pit the size of the Grand Canyon in our stomachs, and we didn't know what to do next.
So we had Connection, which, remember, we had one client in 2011.
Right, we weren't really working on it that hard because we both still had other jobs. But all of a sudden, neither of us had jobs.
And now we needed to hustle.
Do or die.
And so it was 2012 was our do or die year. We actually started working really hard. I was going to coffee shops and co-working spaces, and I was speaking on SEO and social media and teaching classes and going to networking events, sometimes 3 to 4 nights a week.
Right. I mean, we were even at South by Southwest that year, totally hustling. We worked for a company in Australia, organizing teams to hand out flyers.
We were tacking up posters on walls. I was delivering umbrellas to people when it started raining because there was some app.
Yeah, this is like pre-Uber. And so there was this brand new app where you could do jobs for people. So Eric was delivering umbrellas because it rained that year, giving people rides, totally legit stuff.
We were doing whatever it took to make our goal. But the thing is, we had set goals.
We set a really modest financial goal, which was to make $2,000 within our first month. And we said to each other, if we don't make enough money, we will both go out and get real jobs.
It was something we had to work at. Like we've been saying, we did whatever. If you needed something done, we were your people. Like, we had to make that $2,000, but we did.
We did. We met the first goal, and we set another goal, and we met that goal too. And we kept doing it in incremental time periods until after 6 months in 2012, we realized we don't need to set these goals anymore because we're making enough money to live on. It wasn't a lot of money at all, but it was enough to pay our bills. We were doing it. We were self-employed.
It was cool. So you remember that little blog that we told you about, the Astronaut? It kind of took on a life of its own. We did not anticipate this, but we turned on Google Analytics, and in the first month we had over 10,000 visitors. And in the second month it had gone over 20,000, third month 30,000. It was basically increasing 10,000 visitors every month. And because it had taken on a life of its own, we started putting some effort into the Astronaut.
Yes. And also by the middle of 2012, we started to get more serious about traveling full time. It was something we realized and agreed that we really wanted to do. But because our businesses were so new, it felt so far away and so impossible at that time.
And although it felt impossible, we could see how it could work as long as our work was all done online. And so we started thinking about remote work at that time too, and what that looked like. Keep in mind, that was pre-COVID, everybody's working at home. Digital nomadism really wasn't a saying that I was familiar with at that time. There were a few location independent folks that were out there doing it, but it wasn't mainstream. And so back then, it was just an idea that we had, that we were like, if we could do our work on the internet, we could do our work from anywhere. And so it was still part of a dream.
One thing you should know about us is that we take our dreams very seriously.
Very seriously. From a financial standpoint, we knew that if we were ever going to realize our dreams, 2 things needed to happen.
In order to travel full time, our clients for Connection, our online marketing business, needed to trust us. They needed to trust that if we went away traveling, we weren't going to play hooky. We were going to be just as reliable as we were working in our 2-bedroom apartment in Austin.
So we worked hard on building those personal relationships with them, getting to know them, and really establishing that level of trust, and also putting out great work for them so that they could see and know that they could depend on us for this work.
And the second thing that needed to happen financially in order for us to travel full time is that we needed a team of writers for the Astronaut in Austin while we were away. We knew that we could do everything else. We could do the social media, we could do the editing, we could make the connections, we could take the pitches via email, but we weren't going to be there to actually go to the businesses and events and write the articles. And so during 2013, we worked really hard on both those things, client relationships and building up the team of writers for the Astronaut. And by the end of 2013, both those things were in place.
Yeah, we felt really good about it. But there was one more thing that needed to happen. We needed to spur ourselves on to this next move. We made a decision not to renew our lease. After we made the decision not to renew our lease, we went up to Ontario, Canada to spend Christmas with Brittany's grandfather, and her parents were also up there. And I remember talking to her father, my father-in-law, and telling him there are 2 types of people in this world. People who talk about doing things and people who do them, and you will always find me in the latter group. And I told him, we are going to start traveling full time. And at that point in time, we didn't have an RV or a vehicle that we were going to do that in, but we had already canceled our lease. And when we came back, we were in scramble mode to find our new home.
So right around January 1st, New Year's Day, we had our new RV. And we were about ready to go.
2014 was a big year for us. As Brittany said, we had purchased our first RV. It was a 2004 Tiffin Phaeton, big 40-foot diesel Class A pusher bus looking thing. And, you know, going from an apartment and just being the two of us, we figured we needed that much room. So we had, to us, it seemed really small, but in the same way, it was really big. And that's how we started our full-time travel.
So we sold everything that we owned, we left our apartment, and we moved into a home on wheels.
And keep in mind, we had never done this before or anything like it. So we didn't know how to drive this thing. Like, we had to practice by driving around the parking lot. And
one of us would drive behind the other, and we were on our cell phones together saying, okay, you're not in the lane. Get to the left.
I remember that. Oh my gosh, that was so funny. And actually, we were kind of propelled into our very first trip because it was still in storage. We were still moving out of our apartment. We were propelled into our first trip because there was a freeze coming. Do you remember that?
We were so freaked out.
And we didn't know what was going to happen with the tanks or the piping inside the RV, so we were totally freaking out. So we rushed out to the RV, and we took it straight to McKinney Falls State Park, and that's where we spent our very first night in the RV.
Yeah, we just had a few things in a Tupperware container that we had thrown in to spend the night.
Yeah, and in the morning, this hawk landed. It was a red hawk. It landed on our side view mirror, and it was just like the coolest thing. As far as we were concerned, we were out in nature. and there was this hawk.
McKinney Falls State Park is in Austin city limits.
Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing to say that, but that's what we felt like, and it was so cool. And I do remember, Brittany, that you made French toast that first morning.
I used a Tupperware container to make up the batter.
And it was really sweet. That was the start of our adventures.
So we started a blog called RV Wanderlust, and it was really just meant to be a journal online for ourselves so that we could remember everything that we did. And that was why we started it. And
we started meeting some really cool people, like right off the bat. Remember, we met Jill Sessa and Brandon and Carenza, and who else was there at the time? Tales from the Mutiny. That was another one. And the Roaming Pint. There was just a handful of people that were out there that we knew that were kind of doing this lifestyle.
Well, there wasn't that many working age RVers at the time.
But we were running into them. Like, we were connecting with them.
So it was so exciting when we found them because most RVers were retired. But it was really different in 2014.
And talk about the transition, Brittany. Talk about moving finally from our apartment to the RV.
Well, it wasn't a dramatic transition at all. Mm-mm. And we had just been thinking about it for so long. We had been actively planning it for 2 years and thinking about it even longer. And we were so ready. So much preparation had gone into it that it wasn't super dramatic.
No, it was kind of natural.
It was. We adjusted really well.
And our clients adjusted.
Absolutely. By 2015, we had completed a year as full-time travelers. It's really exciting.
It was really exciting.
And we had a pretty good balance going on between balancing work, which we were doing full-time, and life.
Yeah, and typically we had to be online for our clients Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, basically. And so we were staying in parks that had either full hookups or partial hookups. So if you've ever stayed in an RV park, you know what we're talking about, where you're parked right next to somebody, but you've got all the electricity you want, all the water you want, and a sewer system. And we were just working there Monday through Friday, and then we'd play on the weekends.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things we really enjoyed doing was hiking, but Eric is a disabled veteran and he has a lot of knee pain, and so it can be difficult for him to access places that we want to see, amazing vistas and places really off the grid.
We started talking about getting a Jeep Wrangler at that time, and we planned on getting one in March of 2017 because we were budgeting everything out.
Everything was always
Everything.
budgeted.
It was still from the days of when we started our company. We were very, very careful, and we were looking ahead and saying, okay, I think that by March of 2017, we can at least put a down payment and get a Jeep Wrangler so that I could start going to some of these places without the pain.
In February of 2016, we decided that we wanted a baby to join our traveling family. And I have 4 children who are mine through marriage, and so this was going to be a 5th.
So the 4 big kids, we call them our 4 loves, are just a joy, and we love having them with us as often as possible. The 2 eldest boys are both serving in the United States Coast Guard on active duty, so we're really proud of them and thankful for their service. Our daughter Ariana is going to school full-time, and she's just blessed us fairly recently with our very first grandson. Hi, Max, we love you. And then our youngest out of the 4 loves is pursuing a medical degree. At least that's what he wants to do. Right now, he's about to graduate from high school, but get this, he's going to be graduating from high school at the age of 17 with an associate's degree, and he has his eyes set on a medical field. He wants to be a medical doctor, so we're really excited for him.
So that's where the 4 of them are today. But back when we started traveling, they would join us whenever they weren't in school, before they turned 18.
Right. So summer vacations, spring break, Christmas, Thanksgiving, pretty much whenever they weren't in school, we would have them out, but we were in different places all the time.
Yeah, which was really fun because we got to have a lot of experiences together. In March of 2016, we found out we were going to have a baby. We don't waste any time.
In June of 2016, our Jeep Commander, which we had at the time, started having some issues. We were in Oregon, and it had some very bad issues. And so we sold it, and we actually bought a 2014 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited Rubicon, which we named Guardian, which many of you have seen in our other videos. It was a little early, though, for us, Brittany.
Tisk tisk. I think you did it on purpose.
You think I wrecked the Commander on purpose? I didn't wreck it. I didn't get in an accident. It just mechanically failed. But anyway, we got it, and I was really happy about it. Brittany was like counting our pennies and stressed, but we made it through.
And to document our Jeep adventures, we started another blog because you can never have too many blogs.
So now what did we have? We had the Astronaut,
RV Wanderlust,
and Jeepsies, which is our new Jeep blog, as well as Connection.
Right, and Jeepsies was a play on the word gypsies.
Right. On December 3rd, 2016, we welcomed Caspian Theodore Highland into our family. Many of you know him as Baby Nomad or Little Nomad, but he's our little Caspian, and he has been a full-time traveler since birth, and that really changed our lives permanently.
It really did, and we're so happy to have him.
Yeah.
As far as business goes, we were not doing much innovating or growing our businesses at this point. In fact, we were really coasting on past successes.
But there's something to be said for that, Brittany, because you're right. We were coasting. We weren't innovating. We weren't building our businesses. But we had gotten to the point where we were doing well enough that we could pretty much do what we wanted to do.
As far as money to spend.
Right.
Right, but it was at a cost.
In 2017, our 4th year of full-time travel, we pretty much had the lifestyle down to a routine. We were very comfortable with it. It was really easy for us. And we had the added benefit of watching life through Caspian's eyes. Just to see him light up at every new destination and experience new things for the first time, every single time, was a tremendous joy to behold.
At this point, we were still pretty much always staying at private RV campgrounds with full hookups, but the Jeep was giving us new experiences. Eric had started off-roading really heavily, doing Jeep Badge of Honor trails, getting connected with the Jeep community, especially in the Austin area.
And through the Jeep blog.
Absolutely, through Jeepsies. And during the newborn sleepy phase, that was definitely the easiest time to juggle work and having a new baby, but that was changing constantly because as Caspian slept less, I worked less. And looking back, I was crazy to think that I was just going to be able to continue life as normal. I really did not prepare business-wise as much as I should have, and it was starting to get to be a lot.
Yeah, it started to take its toll. There was a lot more stress. Conflict. There was like this issue of, we don't have time to get this done, and just a lot of stuff. So yeah, it had gotten to the point of almost crippling stress at times. And I started to think to myself, I'm not even sure I ever communicated it to Brittany, but I started thinking to myself, what if we didn't have to be online from 9 to 5? What if there was a way for us to be traveling full time without having to be online for clients or for phone calls? Would that give us more free time? What would that even look like? How could we make that happen? And this wasn't something new. I mean, I had been thinking about it, but it was encouraging that we had already made the transition from having to be in a physical place and then communicating to people, our clients, that we were going to start traveling, but we were still going to give them the service. So it wasn't a new idea to kind of change and shift into a model where we didn't have to be online from 9 to 5. This was really key, at least in my head it was key. And I think over the next couple years, maybe, or year and a half, Brittany and I would start to hash this out together. But I remember that this was the time frame when I really started thinking about that.
Eric may have been thinking that, but in reality, he was creating more businesses because in October of 2017, he founded Coast Guard Jeep Club, and he quickly grew it to 1,000 members in 49 states, as well as some different countries. So in case you're not keeping count, this is now 5 business projects.
So we had Connection, we had the Astronaut, we had RV Wanderlust, we had Jeepsies, and now we had Coast Guard Jeep Club.
We're crazy. Tackling the solution to being so overextended seemed even harder than the day-to-day push to maintain what we were doing.
And as far as our lifestyle, the lifestyle that we had gotten into of staying in RV parks, I remember distinctly at some point in time this year, Brittany turned to me and said, I think we're doing this wrong. And what was happening was we were staying in RV parks with our neighbors right next to us. And yeah, we had full hookups, but people were telling us these awesome stories. And then we would see things from our friends, either on Instagram or Facebook, where they were sharing photos of these awesome places that they were parking their RVs, incredible vistas, hiking stories, wild animals, all this cool stuff. And we just felt like we were missing out. Like we were missing out because we were inside the RV parks, fully plugged in.
And so we decided to make a change. We bought one 120-watt solar suitcase for our big 40-foot RV. And we actually marked 22 days without hookups in Moab, Utah. And just realizing that we could do that and having such an amazing experience doing it, that event changed our lives.
It was an absolute game changer.
By the end of 2018, we had racked up 105 days of dry camping. No hookups.
That's over 100 days, y'all. May of 2018 was a very important month for us. It was at this time that Brittany had been listening to a podcast about a family that had been driving around the world with their 2 daughters. And I didn't know about it. Now, see, if you don't know this, Brittany is an extreme introvert. She never really tells me anything until she's already had the conversation with herself inside her own head, and then she comes to me with it. And meanwhile, I think out loud. So between the two of us, we're a beautiful mess. Having said that, she was listening to this podcast, and she was mesmerized by it and didn't tell me anything. And one day we were staying up at Upper Teton View, which is this beautiful little campground outside of Jackson Hole. And we were driving into Jackson Hole, going into town to run some errands. And all of a sudden I'm driving the Jeep and Brittany says, pull over, pull over, pull over. So I thought I hit a squirrel. I didn't know what happened. I pulled over and I went into this parking lot, and there was this big box truck. And Brittany jumped out of the Jeep. I'm not even sure I had even stopped yet fully. She opened the door, jumped out, ran over to the vehicle, pointed at it and said, this is what I want to do. And I didn't have a clue as to what she was talking about.
But that was the day that Eric learned what overlanding is.
She told me about this podcast, and she told me about this family, and she was like, babe, if they can do it with 2 daughters, we can do it with 1 son. Absolutely. And this is what I want to do.
So global overlanding became a dream of ours then in the middle of 2018, but we didn't know if we could do it, and doing it would require a lot of changes. We started down the path, and in August of 2018, we started outfitting our Jeep Wrangler for overlanding.
Right. And the reason we did that was because it sounded great theoretically, but we had never experienced it. And we didn't know that if we were going to drive around the world, what type of vehicle would we want to take? Is it something we would actually even enjoy? What would that even look like? So we figured if we outfit our Jeep for overlanding.
Right. We wanted to start with what we had.
Right. And try that out and then see how it worked and if we liked it, and then we'd make a decision from there.
So then in August, as we were outfitting the Jeep, we also decided that we were going to take our first international overlanding trip, and we were going to go to the interior of Mexico.
And we also decided that we didn't need an RV if we're going to do that, so
We put our RV up for sale.
we were effectively homeless again, except for this time we were going to be moving into the Jeep and going into Mexico with our 2-year-old. Okay, so we've gotten this bug. We've gotten the rooftop tent. The fridge. We're getting ready to start into this overlanding thing. And then we heard of this thing called Overland Expo. And it was supposed to be this really, really epic event of these types of people who did this kind of thing that we were just getting into. And the next one was in Asheville, North Carolina, or just outside of Asheville, in October. So what do? We decided to overland to Overland Expo. We jumped in the Jeep. We left the RV somewhere in, was it Tennessee or Colorado or somewhere?
It was.
Anyway, we parked. It was at an Elks Club. I know that. We parked the RV and we took off and we drove to Overland Expo in October. And man, were our minds blown.
It was so overwhelming.
And it was the one that was the mud fest, right? It was freezing cold. It was muddy, but the people there were just our kind of people. They were the same kind of people that had the same kind of hearts as we did, that wanted to explore and see the world and meet new cultures. And they were just the most friendly bunch of people ever. And we felt right at home. So May, I find out what overlanding is. August, we outfit the Jeep with a rooftop tent and a fridge and a few other items. October, we are in North Carolina at the Overland Expo. And on January 5th, 2019, we crossed the border into Mexico for our very first international overlanding trip.
We logged 2,000 miles through the interior of Mexico. Our southern terminus was Puebla, where Eric spent a good portion of his childhood. He has family there.
Yeah, I got to meet cousins that I'd never met, and I'd gotten to see some cousins that I hadn't seen in about 30 years. It was amazing. I think there were like 33 or 37 of my family members that all converged in one location. We had a big pachanga.
And after this experiment into Mexico...
And that's what it was. It was an experiment to see, is this lifestyle for us? Are we going to enjoy this?
It was a smashing success.
Absolutely.
And it totally affirmed that global overlanding is what we wanted to do and what we wanted to work towards.
So we had planned to come back into the United States a little bit later, but something happened. We were in San Miguel de Allende, and Brittany happened to be on her phone scrolling through Facebook. And tell the folks what you saw, Brittany.
While we were in Mexico, our friends put their Winnebago View RV up for sale. And even though we weren't planning on buying an RV so soon, it was the exact make and model of RV that we were wanting eventually. And so when we got back to the United States in March of 2019, we met up with them, bought the RV, and named it Base Camp.
And not only that, it had 420 watts of solar on top of it because they were boondockers. And remember, we had already transitioned from being in RV parks to our 100 watt or 120
We had
watt
120 watts of solar, but we were
panel,
doing it.
Right? But now we had this new RV that was much smaller, more nimble, and had 420 watts of solar. And we were excited to take this thing around the United States for the next 2 years while we figured out what it looked like for us to actually start driving around the world. Keep in mind, at this time, we didn't even know what type of vehicle we wanted to take around the world or what the plan was going to look like. So this was a 2-year intentional time of discovery for us.
We also knew that our son Silas wasn't going to graduate high school until May of 2021. And so we were definitely planning to be in the United States until he graduated from high school.
Yeah, that was really important to us. And so now if you know our timeline where it is today, you know why we're not leaving and going into Central America until early 2022. So at the end of 2019, Brittany and I had a major life regroup.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. We dropped off Caspian with Mimi and Nunu. For you non-Texans, that's Grandma and Grandpa. And they watched him for a couple days while we went out in base camp and closed the door and didn't go anywhere and got real with one another.
And we talked a lot about everything that needed to change with our 5 different businesses in order to not have to be connected to the internet during set days and hours of the week.
And ultimately, so that we could drive around the world. Understand that the intention behind this was that we needed to make some drastic changes if we were ever going to realize our dream of driving around the world. We still needed to make an income. We probably didn't need to make as much as we were making, but we still needed to make an income, and we needed to start getting rid of the things that were tying us to being online.
Well, and that was a really important component, because I remember when we first went into self-employment, we had this idea that we needed to make X amount of money because we wanted to have a certain standard of living. And that was a word that especially you used a lot, was standard of living. But over the years of traveling, especially as we started overlanding in Mexico, we realized that standard of living wasn't about how often we got to eat out, but it was about how much freedom we had as a family. And that was actually what made life worth living for us. And so all of a sudden, that benchmark of how much we wanted / needed to earn dropped drastically, because we realized that we preferred to be together as a family, to have flexibility in our schedule the most. That was the most important thing. So we didn't need to make as much money.
In other words, life wasn't about stuff. It was about memories. It was about family. It was about time spent together. And that became our driving force. It became, how do we get more of that, even at the expense of less of the other? And we were okay with less of the other if it meant we got more of this. So we all know how 2020 turned out. It was a rough year for everybody, but back when it was first brand new,
normal year
right after the new year, before COVID, we decided to make our second overlanding trip, so international overlanding trip. And in early February of 2020, we headed down into the Baja Peninsula, and we did the entirety of the Baja Peninsula. We did Baja California and Baja Sur, and it was an awesome, awesome time. We got to see so many different things, and we got to live out of the rooftop tent for extreme extended periods of time in varying conditions, which was really good for us.
But unlike interior Mexico, where we really didn't have any internet issues to speak of, we struggled with internet connectivity through the whole peninsula, and it made working very challenging. I was waking up at 5 a.m. to work before Caspian got up, and then I was often working at night after he went to sleep, and it was very long hours, not as much fun as I wish that it had been, and we were just realizing that we needed to make some major changes to our business life if we were ever going to achieve our goal of driving around the world.
And this comes back to that thing that I had been talking about, that idea that I had of, what if we didn't have to be online 9 to 5? What if we could find a way to make enough passive income or have enough income to actually drive around the world and not have to be online for our clients? So 2020 was a major year for us about, we call it burning it all down. So we were in Baja, and we had gone all the way down to Cabo, and we had seen turtles go out onto the beach. Brittany had had a few margaritas. Just a few. We had some amazing tacos and whatnot. Caspian was having a blast, and we were slowly making our way back up, and I think we were in Santa Rosalia. And I got a phone call that my mother, who lives in Seattle, wasn't doing very well and that she needed some help. It was kind of serious, and so we made a decision immediately to stop what we were doing and make tracks back for the United States. So we packed up in the Jeep, and we made a very fast beeline for the border and crossed the border, and I dropped off Brittany and Caspian in San Diego.
That's where base camp was.
Where we had parked base camp. And then I basically drove pretty much nonstop. I think I spent 1 or 2 nights. Maybe, I'm not even sure. It was all a blur. But anyway, I drove to Seattle to get to my mother's side as fast as I possibly could.
And a few days later, Caspian and I joined Eric in Seattle because COVID was hitting at the exact same time and everything was going into lockdown. And you know how it was. We didn't know what was going to happen. We weren't sure whether state borders were going to be closed. So all I knew was that I didn't want our family to be separated. So Caspian and I ended up going up there to Seattle. So all of a sudden, like, our life is completely changed. We're in Seattle. We literally moved into Eric's mom's house, which was the first time we had gone off the road in how many years has it been? Almost 7 years, 6 years. And COVID was going on, so we were sheltering in place. And meanwhile, those deadlines that we set for ourselves to make the business transitions, they were coming up. So we needed to make those really big changes to our lives as well. And so as far as that goes, we sold the Austinot right around June 1st of 2020. Soon after, we handed off Coast Guard Jeep Club to some other members. Connection LLC, we were relying on our dear friend Jolene to do a lot of the day-to-day activities, and we started merging RV Wanderlust and Jeepsies into a new brand.
And on November 14th, 2020, we officially launched Hourless Life.
Woohoo!
So we're hoping this is our final brand. This is the only one you'll ever have to follow us on if you choose to follow us. We're never going to create a new one. Someday we might, get done driving around the world and, buy a
57 Bel Air.
A 57 Bel Air and drive down Route 66 and stop at all the ice cream parlors, and that still might be Hourless Life. Who knows what it's going to be, but that's going to be us for the rest of our time. So now we're Hourless Life. It's 2021 this year, and we are absolutely excited about this year. February 1st of this year, we ordered our Jeep Gladiator, which is the vehicle that's going to take us around the world.
On February 4th, 2021, we sold our Winnebago RV base camp.
We have started taking steps to make this dream a reality.
Yes, we are going to drive around the world.
We are going to drive around the world, and we're hoping that you'll join us right here on YouTube because we're going to do our best to share it. This is the start of that great adventure, an adventure that's been 10 years, a full decade in the making. You guys, thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time to listen to our story. It has been a long story, and we know that, but it's our story, and everybody out there has a story. And we're curious as to your story. We genuinely are. We would love to get to know you. If you've taken the time to invest in us, we would love to invest in you. Comment below. If you have a YouTube channel, if you have an Instagram or a Facebook, let us know so we can go check it out. If you ever have any questions for us, ask.
We would love to know what puts wind in your sails.
And whatever it is that you decide to do in this life, just know we're probably going to be some of your biggest fans. We love rooting people on. We love to encourage people, to inspire people, and to empower people. And ultimately, we're here to answer any questions about this lifestyle or about what we're up to. Please go ahead and ask. We're here for you.